Hello and welcome back. Again, my name is Cole Blair. I'm the lead biologist with Wildlife Preservation Canada's Native Pollinator Initiative, and I'm continuing a series here all about our work with bumblebees, including how you can get involved with things like community science and even how to identify bumblebees. There are different existing sections on their ecology and life cycle and stuff like that. But this one specifically, I'm going to pick up with why community science. So, um, when we're thinking about, again, just to recap, our bumblebee recovery program, the four cornerstones, being our conservation breeding, our research and monitoring, education and outreach, and finally our community science. Why are we so concerned with community science in our bumblebee recovery program? There's a few different reasons. The number one being that volunteers and their contributions are invaluable to our research and conservation programs. The great thing about bumblebees is that they can be easily ID'd from photographs because, by and large, different species are can be separated from another by the different color patterns present on their heads, their thoraxes, which is the middle part of the body where the wings and the legs attach, and then also their abdomens, which is that long part that extends and is basically the bee's bum. So they're easy to identify from photos based on the color patterns that we see on the head, thorax, and abdomen. And as professional bee researchers, our availability is limited by funding, time, where we are, and everything like that. So we can only really be in so many places at once, really. And so volunteers can come in and gain really important um, locational, ecologically insightful data on the bumblebee communities at important places, like where there are, um, I don't know, where there's already existing records of at-risk bees, for example. If there's a ecologically significant location that's home to a bunch of rare habitats and things like that. If there's a established location that is known for its biodiversity and things like that, volunteers can help researchers by going out in our stead and recording bumblebees to help us gain insight into um, the community at large at these locations, the terrestrial systems and the ecosystem health at these locations, and then also on the personal side of things, the community science programs are a great opportunity for engagement and connection. Oftentimes, when we have training workshops, we'll see families come, so parents with kids or siblings or other loved ones, friends, and even if that's not the case, people have made friends at these programs, and they've also been able to connect not with other people only, but also with um, different aspects of the natural world around them. So I've had past participants of community science programs tell me that, they learned about bees by coming to our workshop and now they can't escape them. Like they're looking for bees everywhere they go. And when they're doing so, they're also noticing all these other little insects and creatures and flowers that they might not have noticed otherwise. So it's a real good opportunity to engage with the natural world around you and the like-minded people around you. And even if you're not affiliated with a program, a community science program, you can still get that same benefit in a way that I'll delve into more later. And so, what accompanies our community science efforts is something that we call Train the Trainer. And these are basically workshops that we deliver to train organizations to be able to train volunteers on bumblebee community science. So, as the name suggests, we're training the trainers. Like we're the trainers training other trainers, and then those trainers will train volunteers. So again, we're training organizations to run their own community science programs, and we're doing this to expand community science and bumblebee monitoring across Canada. And we've been quite successful with this. We've had a number of um, piloted and maintained programs in a few different parks, namely here in Southern Ontario. So broadly, what's involved in this is that we'll train groups on how to run a program. We'll help them devise and formulate their methods, choose their sites. We'll help them with their first year's workshop, but eventually, what will result is a self-sustaining program that the host kind of runs with minimal support and supervision from us at Wildlife Preservation Canada. We have a few different current programs running right now, namely the program at Pioneer Provincial Park. It's our longest running program. It's one that we personally run every year. But there are also a couple different programs that have launched um, because of Train the Trainer. So Claremont Nature Center, that's partnered with Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. That's been running since 2022 independently. Rouge National Urban Park has also been running independently. That one started in 2023. Again, from the Train the Trainer workshops that we put on. Um, so again, we have these different programs at ecologically significant locations, gaining really, really crucial inference onto different bees. And um, excitingly, every single one of these programs have been contributing rare and at-risk bee sightings, um, including the American bumblebee, which is pictured here. So the American bumblebee has been found in Pinery, Claremont, and Rouge. So when we're thinking about different community science programs, um, we can tailor them in many, many different ways and really suit the needs of the host. But what they all have in common is the usage of bumblebeewatch.org. So bumblebeewatch.org is a community science platform. If you're familiar with something like iNaturalist, it's quite similar in its application, except it is exclusive to bumblebees, as the name suggests. It's a continent-wide database that experts use to track um, bumblebee populations and ranges, and that information can also help inform conservation actions like species assessments, policies, and recovery strategies. So when we're um, talking about our community science programs and we're using Bumblebee Watch, we're not just using Bumblebee Watch to consolidate our program specific data. So we're not just providing Bumblebee data for a specific location, but we're also providing Bumblebee data to a broader conservation effort that spans the entirety of Canada and the continental United States. So again, contributing to something much greater, where other experts across the whole continent can look at this data and use it in conjunction with other data to answer some really, really interesting questions and guide conservation actions. So the basics of how Bumblebee Watch works, especially in the context of a community science program. So you imagine you're a program volunteer, you go out and you conduct a survey. You would then take photos of your bumblebees. You submit them to Bumblebee Watch, and you can try and ID your bees. We provide some ID resources on our webpage, but Bumblebee Watch also has a similar ID guide built into the submission process to help you identify them. So there'll be prompts for you to select what you see on the head, thorax, and abdomen of your bee. And then the interactive field guide on Bumblebee Watch will filter possible species IDs based on the inputs that you give. There is also now a new AI implementation on Bumblebee Watch. So if you submit photos to Bumblebee Watch and you hit the button for the AI results, they'll give you a potential species ID and it'll tell you as a percentage how um, um, how confident the AI model is in the species ID of that photoed bee. But in any case, regardless of what species you selected as, what species the AI thinks it is, a Bumblebee ID expert will come in and identify the different submissions, especially with regards to our community science platforms. Someone on our team will be the one individually to come and identify the bumblebees that your volunteers submit or that you submit as a volunteer. So by using Bumblebee Watch, we're helping experts help bumblebees. I mentioned they're used in species assessments, and I'll use an example here. The American bumblebee I mentioned prior was a assessed as special concern here in Canada back in 2018 before being listed in 2023. And that 2018 assessments that assessed it as special concern utilized data from Bumblebee Watch in its decision making. So all the different records of the American bumblebees can help experts track things like range changes, population changes, and inferences into that. And then that information can be used to inform species assessments. And again, this is an example of that. You can also monitor species ranges and support policy discussions. Um, and I'm going to use another example of this. This is a really cool example. So this map here in the bottom left, this is on Bumblebee Watch. So this is a map of all of the different records of the common eastern bumblebee on Bumblebee Watch. And we see from their distribution here on the map that they're mostly um, in the eastern half of continental United States, extending into southern Canada, Maritimes and whatnot. But we also see some blue tiles. There's some there in Winnipeg. You know, those common easterns might be pushing, they might be like on the edge of their natural range. They might be expanding. Hard to say. But then we see some in Saskatchewan and some in Edmonton. Those are getting further and further apart. And then we also see some in Vancouver, and that's, to an expert looking at this, that would really raise some eyebrows. The common eastern bumblebee in Vancouver. That's suspicious. So that might prompt some investigations. Why are they out there? Are they misidentified submissions, or are they really there? And this isn't a hypothetical question. Somebody actually asked this question and investigated it. And what they found was that people on Bumblebee Watch in the Vancouver area were submitting photographs of the common eastern bumblebees mating in the wild. So they weren't misidentified bees. They were actually photographed establishing in the wilds by mating. And so this led to an investigation. And basically, the result of this is was found to be that um, I had mentioned earlier that common eastern bumblebees are shipped around to pollinate greenhouses. This was what happens. These common eastern bumblebees were brought to the Vancouver area. They were installed into greenhouses, and then they were some of them were escaping their captive agricultural environments and establishing into the wild, basically becoming an invasive species where they shouldn't really be. So, looking at the different ranges and records on Bumblebee Watch can help inform a multitude of different questions. This one being an example, a really cool example, I might add. So again, because of that discovery, that might inform our policy discussions on how we manage commercial bumblebees, for example. So again, just an interesting example of some really cool ecological information that we can get by monitoring bees on Bumblebee Watch.